Friday in class, we talked about unit rate, and we said unit rate wants you to figure out how much would just one item cost. So instead of buying like a 12-pack of Coke, how much would only one can cost? We looked at that. So the next few slides, there's going to be 6. I'm going to work out questions 1, 2, and 3 from your homework. So I hope that helps you. If you look at question number 1, it says they are buying strawberries and they are getting 2 pints for $3. So the first thing we want to look at is the first 2 ratios that have been set up for us. We want to look at 2 pints. They set up cost $3, and then beside it they said 1 pint cost question mark. We don't know how many dollars. So in some of the classes, we looked at doing what we did previously, cross multiply and divide. So if you cross multiply these 2 numbers, I'm going to multiply them together. $3 times 1. Okay, that's pretty easy. $3. Then the other number that's left over in the question, the 2, I'm going to divide that into $3. So some of you may be already saying, I know how much that is. If so, great job. Sometimes it's easy to half an amount of money, and your brain can just do it without showing your work. For those of you who want to write it down and figure it out, 2 can go into 3 one time. If I subtract 2, I get 1 left over. As I'm moving across my problem, I have now come to the decimal point. So I want to move it up into my answer. Then I'm going to bring down the next digit, which is a 0. How many times can 2 go into 10? 5 times. 2 times 5 is 10 exactly. I'm going to bring down the next digit. How many times can 2 go into 0? Is 0. And I did that last digit because I'm working with money. And money has 2 decimal places. So I definitely want to add that to my answer so that it looks right. So my answer, 2 pints, cost $1.50. So for your first question mark, you want to get $1.50 underneath the 1 pint. Okay, so we're going to go to the next slide, and I'm going to use the last ratio to find out, question mark on top, how much strawberries could you get for $1? Okay, same question again, but I just wanted a new space. If you would like to use notebook paper to do these questions, that would be awesome because you have more space. I am now going to look at, I already did 1 pint, how much it costs. So I'm going to pretend like that is not there anymore. And I'm going to look at the first ratio, which is 2 pints to $3. And I'm going to compare it with question mark on top, how many pints cost $1. So these are the 2 ratios I want to focus on right now. I can still solve this problem the exact same way by doing cross multiply and divide. So if I look at that, the 2 numbers that are diagonal now are 2 on top with $1 on bottom. So I'm still going to multiply those 2 numbers. $1 times 2. And some of you are saying, I already know that. It's super easy. It's 2. And then the number that's left over, that's the one I'm going to divide by. After you multiply, the number you multiply with, that is the number that goes inside the box. So for this question, when I multiplied, I got 2.00. So that is the number that goes inside the box. And then the 3.00, which was my number I haven't used yet, that goes outside the box. Now we also said we do not want to divide by a decimal. So for me to get rid of 3.00, I want to move the decimal 2 places. And then I also want to move the decimal 2 places in my other number. If I move the decimal straight up, now it's going to be right there in my answer. If I try to divide now 300 into 200, can that go? Hopefully you're saying no. Okay, I need to keep going. I can't just end and say the total answer is 0 because it's not going to be 0. So I'm going to add one more digit in my question. I'm going to try and divide 300 into 2,000. I'm going to guess and say that it's going to be 6 because I know 6 times 3 is 18, and that's really close to 20. So I'm going to put a 6. 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 0 is 0. Then 6 times 3 is 18. So if I subtract 0 minus 0, 0 minus 0, 0 minus 8 is not possible, so I'm going to borrow. 10 minus 8 is 2, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So I have 200 left over. I'm still not going to stop. I'm going to put another digit in my question and bring it down. Hopefully you're noticing, oh my gosh, this is 2,000 again. So what do you know is going to happen in your answer? If you said it's going to repeat and be the same digit again, perfect, you got it right. So in this question, $1 worth of strawberries. If you purchase $1 worth of strawberries, you would be buying 0.6 repeating pints of strawberries. So 0.6 with a line above it. If you only want to put one of the 6's, that would be totally fine. So question number 2 says there's coffee, and in the picture it says 2 pounds / $5. So they have set up the ratio for us, and we are first going to look at the first 2 ratios where it says 2 pounds on top, $5 on bottom equals 1 pound on top, question mark on the bottom. Now some people may have said in the last question, I knew what half of $3 was. So you may be also saying again in this question, I know half of $5. So definitely, if you already know that, totally fine. You can go ahead and put in $2.50. That one is not very hard. If you had $5 and you had to share it equally, each person would get $2.50. If you weren't sure, you could cross multiply and divide. 5 times 1, and then divide by 2. Could be the same thing. Okay? 5 times 1 is 5, and then when you divide, that goes in the box, and the other number that we didn't use yet, which was a 2, it's going to go on the outside. Okay? If you finish working that out, you should get 2.5. And remember, money needs 2 digits behind the decimal, so that's why I put 2.50. So I'm going to go to the next slide, and we're going to do the harder one, the last ratio in question 2. Okay, so again, we have already used the first and second ratio in this question about coffee. So I'm going to scratch this one out. And then I'm going to look at the first ratio, which is 2 pounds cost $5. And I'm going to solve it with how many pounds of coffee cost $1. Okay, so if I think about this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cross multiply 2 pounds with $1. So $1 times 2 pounds is 2.00. Right after you multiply, that is the number that goes inside the box. 2.00 goes inside the box. Then the other number that we haven't used yet is 5. So this number is the one that goes outside the box. 5.00. And again, just like in the last question, we do not want a decimal in the number we're dividing by. So I'm going to move the decimal 2 places so I can get it to the end. I need to move the decimal 2 places so I can get it to the end. I'm going to move the decimal straight up in my answer. Now I'm going to divide. 500 cannot go into 2. It cannot go into 20. And it cannot go into 200 because 500 is bigger. So I'm going to put a 0 in front. And just like before, I'm not going to just stop and say the answer is totally 0 because I can get some coffee for $1. I just can't get 1 whole pound. So add another 0 behind the decimal. Now I'm going to try and divide 500 into 2,000. This one, hopefully you can easily count. 500, 1,000. 1,500, 2,000. So I just counted 4 groups. So that means 5 times 4 is exactly 2,000. So now if I was at a coffee shop that sold me coffee by however much I wanted to spend, I could say, can I get $1 worth of coffee? And the person there would say, sure, you can have 0.4 pounds. 0.4 pounds of coffee. So for my top question mark, I'm going to have 0.4. Question number 3. There is a big giant bag of potatoes. Kind of looks like cookies though in the picture, which would be much yummier. But anyways, we'll go with cookies. Just like the last 2 questions, we are going to look at the first 2 ratios. And we're figuring out 2 pounds cost $1.50. How much would only 1 pound cost? So I'm going to look at these 2 ratios first. And again, this is just dividing the amount of money in half from 2 pounds to 1 pound. So some of you may already be knowing what half of $1.50 is. But if you're not sure, we're going to look at how can you solve it. So I am going to first cross multiply $1.50 times 1. And $1.50 times 1 is still $1.50. As soon as I multiply, that is the number that goes inside the box. 1.50. The other number that we haven't used yet is a 2. That is going to go outside the box. Now I'm going to divide. Can 2 go into 1? No. So I'm going to subtract. I still have 1 left over. As I am moving across my question, the next thing I come to is my decimal. So I'm going to move it up into my answer. Then I'm going to bring the next digit down, which is a 5. 2 times something is really close to 15. 2 times 7 is exactly 14. So I'm going to subtract 14. I get 1 left over. I still have another digit to bring down in my answer, so I'm going to bring down the 0. 2 times something is perfectly 10. 5. So now I have no leftovers. So if I went to a store and said, I need 1 pound of potatoes, please, the person would say, okay, that is 75 cents. So you can either write your answer as $0.75, or you can just say 75 cents, just like that. Okay, going to the next slide, and we're going to look at still the potatoes, but now comparing it with the last ratio to know how much $1 worth of potatoes is. Okay, so just like the last 2 questions in a row, I am going to scratch out this middle ratio so I don't see it anymore. And I'm still going to solve this problem just like I have before. I'm going to take the first ratio, 2 pounds is $1.50, and I'm going to compare it with how many pounds is just $1. Okay, so if I want to start solving this, the first thing I want to do is cross multiply 2 pounds with $1. 2 pounds with $1. So 2 pounds, sorry about that. 2 pounds times $1. $1 times 2. $2. So as soon as you multiply, that is the number that's going to go inside the box. So I'm going to put 2.00 inside the box. Now, if I look back up at my question, the other number I have not used yet is $1.50. That is going to go outside the box. And just like all the other questions, I do not want to divide by a decimal, so I'm going to move it to the end of my problem so I get a normal number. To do that, I have to move it twice. Now I'm going to move the decimal twice in my other number. I'm going to go ahead and move it straight up into my answer. Now I'm going to divide. 150 cannot go into 2 or 20, but 150 can go into 200 one time. I'm going to subtract 150. I'm going to have 50 left over. I can't just stop and say the answer is exactly 1 because I have leftovers, so I'm going to add another 0 into my question, bring it down. Now I'm going to try to do 150 into 500. Well, I'm going to guess and say 3. So over here on my paper, I'm going to try and guess 150 times 3. 3 times 0 is 0. 5 times 3 is 15. Carry the 1. 1 times 3 is 3, plus 1 more is 4. Okay, so now I know that's 450. If I subtract 500 from 400 with 450, I get 50 again. Now, what do you notice happened on this question? I got 500 again, so what's going to happen in my answer? 3 is going to keep repeating. Now, I am not doing money, I'm doing pounds. So if I went to a store and said, I need $1 worth of potatoes because that's all the money I have, they would say, okay, you can have 1.3 repeating pounds of potatoes for $1. Alright guys, hopefully that helped you, and if you've already done some of these on your own, at least you could check the first 3 questions and make sure you got those correct. I will see you in class on Monday.